everyone. Welcome to My Deeper Life Masterclass, the last one for this year. We are probably going to we may not go that long because we are very lightly attended today. So we're going to go through a few notes. If there is some testimony, we will have some folks come up, and then we'll end maybe on time or a little before. So I want to just open up in prayer. Father, right now, we just thank you right now in the name of Yeshua. We thank you for all that you're doing in our lives. We thank you for Pastor Dan as he travels. We just thank you that you're going to keep his family safe, and all those who are involved with My Deeper Life, we thank you that you are blessing them, that you said that you would give them their heart's desire, and whatever we put our hands to, you said you'll cause to prosper. We just thank you right now and give you all the honor and the glory in the precious name of Yeshua. Well, this is the last My Deeper Life that we have for this year, 2017. So I hope everybody has been able to accomplish all their goals. Right now, I'm just going to talk a little bit about getting prepared to set goals for 2018. We're at that point right now. If you haven't already started, now might be a good time to get started because 2018 is coming. And what I wanted to do is I just wanted to just start out with some real basic things that I think help me be able to set goals to get myself prepared. 2017, and I'll probably touch on a little later on, has been very good. I've been able to accomplish a lot of goals. I've been able to stay focused on the things that I needed to get done. But then there were also some things that I would like to have gotten done a little better. And for me, I have something called lessons learned, changes made. Every time I reflect back on what I've been able to accomplish, all the time I usually find something a little bit different that I could have done, a little more effective. So I try to take those lessons and incorporate them into my next attempt to make me more successful. So I'm going to talk a little bit about goal setting because goal setting is so important, and then we'll go from there. So one of the things that I was reading a particular article, and it was talking about goal setting, and they were saying that there is a simple plan for you when you set goals, and it basically boils down to writing down your goals, making plans to achieve them, and then working on those plans every single day. And what's important about that is the writing it down, because a lot of times we have things that we want to accomplish, and that's in our head, and then we don't really write it down. And once we don't write it down, we don't come up with plans to achieve it. So we basically do hit or miss planning, and then we don't work on our goals every day, which is one of the major reasons why we don't accomplish our goals. In another article I was reading, they were talking about successful people. And one of the things that they asked successful people, what do you think about goal-oriented people? And what they said was successful people are goal-oriented, and they know what they want, and they focus single-mindedly on achieving it every single day. And there's a saying that says, what you focus on begins to expand and grow in your life. And when you focus on what you want, then those things tend to be attracted to you. But what a lot of people do, as we'll see in a moment, and we talk about here, they focus on the things they don't want. They talk about the things that are happening, which are the problems, and they begin attracting that into their life. And this right here just happens to be a mindset that we have to begin to create. One of the things we talk about is praying from a point of victory. And that's one of the reasons why we pray from a point of victory, because we're praying the solution. We're praying what we want, not the problem, not the circumstances, and not the situation. Also, Pastor Dan even talks about that when you're walking this walk, then what you do is you believe it when you say it, not when you see it. You believe it when you say it, not when you see it. So again, this takes a mindset change. It takes a paradigm shift when you really start focusing on speaking out the things that you want and not the things that you don't want. And sometimes it even causes us to slip from time to time because we find things coming out of our mouth that shouldn't be coming out, that are contrary to what we want. So we just have to make sure that we make our adjustments. Give me a moment because it's a little warm in here. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is the fact if you go into Genesis 1, 26 and 28, what you find is that Yahweh created us in his image. He said, and starting in verse 26, it says, then God said, now let's make humans who live to be like, who will be like us. They will rule over all the fish in the sea and the birds and birds in the air. They will rule over all the large animals and all the things that crawl on the earth. So God created humans in his own image. He created them to be like himself. And this was in the midst of the whole Genesis, which is Yahweh creating, and then he made us in our image. So what we have to be very careful about, as we were talking about, is what do you focus on? What things are you speaking out of your mouth? And then if you've been made in his image, you have that creative power. So a lot of times we're creating things that we don't want. We speak out things that we don't want, and we attract them to our life. And bottom line, what I heard one of my pastors say is we create our world. The words that we speak, we actually are creating our world. And then one of the things, as I started thinking about this a lot, if you look in James talks about the tongue being a very small member, but it can set your world on fire. And then Yeshua also said that what's in your heart comes out your mouth. So if you really want to know how to control your world and the direction you're going in, because he makes the analogy that the tongue is like a rudder. And even though that you have this huge ship, this very small member steers the course of this ship. So if what's in your heart comes out your mouth, and your mouth controls the direction of your life, it tells you by deduction you want to put the right things in your heart. And this is why Yeshua said you got to get the word in your heart. And there's a verse of scripture says, Lord, I hide your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. When you really realize, and we talk about righteousness here, is right thinking, right speaking. So as you begin to control the words you put into your heart, you begin to control the direction of your life. And that's why you always want to be focusing on Yahweh's word. You want to be speaking his word. And even in Joshua, it says that if you let the book, if you place a book before your face and you don't let it depart from your mouth, and meditated therein day and night, then you will observe to do all that is according or written in there, and then you would make your way prosperous. So there's so many different examples of getting Yahweh's word in your heart and then allowing it to control your life. And the other one that I think about is your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. So the word begins to direct and guide you. And I'm not going to go through all of it, but if you go back to Genesis 1-9, it talks about the power of the Tower of Babel. And that is just an example of how some people got together and they set a goal. And they said, we're going to build a tower that's going to reach up to heaven so we won't be scattered. And because they were of one mind, one heart, one tongue, they had one common language, that the Lord said, let's go down and visit them. And then he basically says that because they're one mind and one heart, that there's nothing that they set their mind to that they cannot accomplish. And that's how powerful our words are, our determination, what we focus on. So we want to be very careful with the words that we speak. And another expression I heard is you become what you think about most of the time. And if that saying is true, then stop and think, what do you think about most of the time? Because what is very interesting is a lot of times we don't even pause to hear the thoughts coming out of our mouth. There are people, and I work for an airline, I won't say the name, but I came from corporate America. And when I went to the ramp, it was a whole new world. I mean, these people, every other word, and not all of them, but most of them was a curse word. But the funny part about it is people curse so much that they didn't even realize they were cursing. You say, why did you say that? How come you curse? What? I said, what? Because it happens so much. It becomes a behavior. And this is my point behind all that is if you become what you think about the most and you're not thinking about what you're saying, then stuff is just coming out of your mouth. And a lot of things that come out of your mouth is what your environment is, the condition you're in. That's why being in My Deeper Life is so important. And Pastor Dan always talks about you want to be in a church where you're around faith-filled believers, believers that believe in miracles. We had one young man who got, Pastor prayed for him. The whole service went towards him because of cancer. But the church that he was in, Pastor Dan was just stating, you want to be in a place where they believe in miracles. Because even though you're healed, but you're around people who doubt, are negative, don't believe miracles happen, they're going to talk you out of your miracle. So you become what you think about most of the time. If you go to Proverbs 23:7, it talks about, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And that's what's so important about making sure you have the right things in your heart. And then Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for out of it flows the very issues of life. So we have to become a lot more diligent in thinking about what's coming out of our lives. And the interesting part about it is, if you can get to the place where things are habitual, that's why you want goals, because goals force you to focus and stay on something until it becomes a part of who you are. And if you focus on getting the word in your heart, it's going to get in your heart. One of the things in business, they always talk about what gets managed or what gets measured gets done. Because see, and I was a supervisor for a while, and when you say, okay, this week we're focusing on safety and we want to make sure everybody has their seatbelts on. Well, if you're out and everybody's walking around and all the supervisors are pulling people over because they don't have the seatbelts on, and you know that's going to be an issue, you're going to make sure your seatbelt's on. But then there are other areas that you may be slacking off in because nobody's paying attention. And the funny part about it is, you really can see what you believe in is your actions under pressure when nobody's around. What do you say? What do you do? That's what your true values are. We'll talk about that in a moment. And one of the things, I was reading another article, and they had put it this way. It says, your outer world becomes a reflection of your inner world, and it mirrors back to you what you have been thinking about most of the time. So if you really want to know what's in your heart, what you've been thinking about, look around you. And see, and I was thinking through that a little bit, and I was saying, well, some people might say, well, I just don't make a decision. I just choose not to. But you know something? By not doing something, you've made a decision. And people don't realize that you made a decision not to do something. So if things don't happen for you, that's because it's a decision you made not to get involved, not to participate, not to be engaged, and then you lose out on other things. So our actions definitely determine where we end up. So you want to, during this time of looking at your goals and reflecting, you really want to start thinking about how you think. And when asked, successful people think about what they want and how to get it most of the times. And that was one of the things that he was bringing out. But now here's where we balance that off, because we don't want to just ask for stuff. Because one of the verses of scripture I had was Matthew 16:26. It says, and what has a man gained if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? Right? And then also in Psalms, and I'll go right there for a minute, and it's Psalms chapter 1 and verse 1. It says, great blessings belong to those who don't listen to evil advice, who don't live like sinners, and who do not join those who make fun of God. Instead, they love the Lord's teaching and think about them day and night. And as a result, it says, so they grow strong like a tree planted by a stream, a tree that produces fruit when it should, and the leaves that never fall. Everything they do is successful. So that's the balance. Yes, you can set goals. Yes, you can pursue whatever you want. But one guy said that if you're climbing a building, you better make sure, or climbing a ladder, you better make sure it's leaning against the right building. So if you're going to be climbing up, you're going to be setting goals and doing things, you want to make sure that's balanced with making sure that's what Yahweh is consistent with who he is and what he wants for you. So in my deeper life, which I'm going to kind of be coming back to the tools and some of the principles, we have the balance scale. And in the balance scale, we used to call it the case permissive, and that is what's your kingdom calling, and that's really where you start. Before you start setting goals, you want to step back and say, what is Yahweh calling me to do? So you can hear his voice, and then whatever you're doing, you're consistent with what your calling is. Because see, the reason why a lot of people get to the top and have huge success but are empty is because it's inconsistent with who they are, what their values are, and what they believe. And the funny part about that is when you set goals that are inconsistent with your values, you feel it. You don't feel good about what you're doing. You always find ways to undermine it because it's just not who you are. And at the end of the day, you look in the mirror and you got to ask, am I proud of the person I'm looking at? So yes, you can be successful, but are you going to be successful by manipulating, cheating, and conniving. And Kim and I were just having that conversation, and she was talking about her business, and she left where she was at because one of the things they asked her to do was to start going in the back door and stealing people and moving around so they could continue to place people, and that was against who she was. Yes, she could have made money. Yes, she could have profited from it, but in the end of the day, would she have been feeling good about herself? Would she believe that Yahweh would have been proud of what she's doing? And we know what you put out comes back. So then when she now has a business and people are stealing people from her business, she can't complain about, well, what's going on, because what you put out there does come back. So you want to make sure you're consistent with Yahweh's word. So before you start setting the goals, what is he calling you to do? And then the next part is the K part is or actually the S part of Spumessa was spiritual. So the first two things you're looking at is what is my kingdom calling, and then how do I want to grow spiritually? Once you build that foundation, then everything else will be consistent with that. And we'll talk a little bit more about the values and clarifying values in a moment. But anyway, so when you get started with your plan, and you want to make sure you start there. What are you called to do, and how do you want to grow spiritually? Now, one of the things without the balance scale, and I know I did it when I was in the world, even before I came here to Faith Exchange, is I was very focused on making money and my career. Everything else kind of revolved around that. And I wore myself out. I got so tired, because when you're doing stuff in your own strength, it's fine for a while, and I had some marginal success, but then after a while, you just get so tired. You get so tired, and I see people who want to be the superstar. They want everybody to come to them. They hoard their knowledge, and they are the superstar. But now when everybody starts coming to them, now they're complaining. How come everybody comes to me? Nobody does this. I can't take off. I'm blah, blah. Well, you created that world by the way you hoarded knowledge, and you positioned yourself, and now you're complaining about people are coming to you. So you did it, but so that's how when we're not sitting down thinking about our goals, we create a world that's very inconsistent with what we want to live in. Amen. And so now some of the questions you may ask yourself, and these are some of the things that I looked at on the spiritual side, and I find that questions really pull a lot out of you. It just really makes you think when you ask questions. So it says, if your spiritual life was perfect 5 years from now, what would it look like? And what you start doing is start getting a picture of what you want to do, where you want to be. How many times have Yahweh spoken to you? You get all excited. Yes, 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 I'm going to do that. And then you don't do anything. And then a year later, somebody's ministering, and that word comes back to you. You're like, oh, yeah, I was supposed to be doing that. But see, with goals, it makes you stay focused and consistent. But you want to start with that future vision, because see, and we talk about what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail. See, when you picture that and you put everything aside, and some people create a fantasy or whatever, but when you do that, what you begin to do is take away the limitations. Because when you look at where you are today, oh, I can't do that, I don't have the money. Oh, I can't do that, I don't have this resource. And you start disqualifying yourself before you even get started. But when you just say, okay, what would I like my spiritual life to be? Where do I want to look like? Then you come back to the present, and then you can start dealing with, okay, so then in order for that to happen, what steps do I need to take? And that becomes your plan. Now, some people might say, in setting goals, and I'm kind of throwing things out, well, I don't know what I want. Well, the inverse of what you want is what you don't want. So if you don't know what you want, start with the things that are bothering you. Start with the worries that you have. I know we're not supposed to worry, we're not supposed to doubt, but that's because of the way we're thinking. And in order to eradicate that, you got to put a plan in place to build your muscles. One time, I was having a real challenge at work. And I mean, I just had, and this is a while back, but I had a really, my attitude wasn't that great because of what was going on at work. So I got in agreement with my wife, and we started praying about what was going on at work. And of course, she was praying for the supervisor and favor and open the doors and all the things that were wonderful. But I'm on the train, and the Lord said to me, so why do you want me to fix everybody else? I'm thinking like, what? Make everything easy. He says, so what happens when you go someplace else and you find the same thing? He says, why don't you pray to get stronger so it doesn't bother you than me fixing everybody else around you? And I had to call my wife and say, I just got chastised. I said, I really got to pray to be stronger. But see, sometimes that's what we do. We focus on everything else, and we'll talk about that in a moment. We're a victim. We say we can't do nothing because until everything changes, we can't change. But that's not true. And that's why if you're in a victim mentality, you can't set goals. because you are not going to do what it takes to get there, because you're going to be running into, well, I can't do this because of this. I don't have this. I don't have. But when you take that, what do I want to be 5 years from now, knowing that, forget it. You do nothing to do with your limitation. What would it look like? Or what are the things that you're challenged with? And if you weren't challenged with that, how would your life look? That's where you begin setting your goals. So you may not know what you want, but you know what you don't want. And then you can start putting plans in place to get rid of what you don't want. Another thing you might say is, how much time would you like to be spending in the Word? Another question how would your prayer life look? I know Gloria loved that part. She wish everybody's prayer life was a lot better. And then it says, what area of the ministry would you be serving in? And what would be some of the things you'd be doing? See, a lot of times we go to church, and I think here, because we're a little bit smaller, everybody gets involved. And I'm Ministry of Help, so if I haven't come up and asked you for something, you haven't been around, because I ask everybody to get involved. But a lot of churches are big enough where you could just go in and sit down, get the word, and not get involved, not commit to anything, go, come back. But see, if you're not using what you're getting, you're losing it, because what you don't use, you begin to lose. Because it's just like being in class and they're teaching you about something that you're supposed to do 5 years from now. What do you say in class? What do I need this for? Why do I need this math? And then you get out in the world, you're talking about working with money. Now you get out in the world and you say, nobody taught me about money. Well, they did, but you probably weren't paying attention. See, so when you really start asking these questions, you're really starting to focus on, what do I need to do? And I'm not a victim. Another thing would be, what are some of the things that Yahweh has asked you to start studying, and when would you set aside the time to begin to understand that, or what Pastor Dan talks about, press into the Spirit? And I know there's things that I'm sitting in church and I hear, oh, that's a good word. But do you write it down and do you study it out? Because when you pay attention to that stuff, Yahweh's giving you things because he knows what's going to happen. And just think about the times you actually did study something else, you followed directions, you got prepared, and then you were at that place, that point in time, and you were so glad that you prepared. And it reminds me of, and they would tease me that Wednesday, I was like, ooh, 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 the kid that always raises his hand in class. But just think about it. When you go to class and you have a test and you've studied and you prepared and you did all the things that you were supposed to do, and the teacher says, okay, on Friday we're going to have a test. You get in 8 o'clock, you expect a test. Now here it is, noontime. You're looking up, you're looking at her like, hey, where's the test? And throughout the day, now we're almost at the end of the day, and you're like, you want to raise your hand and say, excuse me, are we going to have a test? Because you prepared. Now, the flip side is if you didn't prepare, you'll come sneaking in at 8 o'clock, you have your head down, you hope she doesn't, and then, oh, we made it to lunch, she hasn't done, oh, wow, we're almost out of school, and you're looking at the clock, and then all of a sudden she says, okay, put everything away, and you're like, oh, my God. But see, when you're prepared and you study it out, then you're ready for whatever has to happen, and Yahweh's preparing us for stuff, but he can't give it to us because we're like the kid who didn't study, and we're waiting for the class to just end, versus the person who's prepared and ready to spring into action. Amen? So those are some questions that you can ask yourself on the spiritual side to really start stimulating some thought in that area. Now the inverse, or the flip side of successful people, what they were saying is they looked at unsuccessful people and they say, okay, what do they think about? And it says unsuccessful people think about what they don't want. They think about their problems, their worries, and who to blame. And that's very interesting. Never myself, and we're going to talk about that. They kind of justify, rationalize. But see, here's the thing. That begins to build resentment and anger. And when you're angry and you're in that negative emotion, you begin to shut down your creativity and your ability to produce. That's why what I'm talking about here is before we even get to goal setting, we're talking about our thinking. We're talking about taking responsibility. We're talking about not being a victim and focusing on what we can do. That sets you up to set your goals. And we're talking about one other thing that needs to be there, but that's what you have to do. Now, here's an analogy. Living without goals is like driving in a thick fog. No matter how powerful or well-engineered your car, you drive slowly and hesitantly, making little progress on even the smoothest road. See, when you don't have goals, your world is cloudy, and when you don't know what's right ahead of you, you're hesitant to even take a step. You're hesitant to take a risk. You just want to be comfortable, sit back, and sit on your hands and hope nobody asks you to do anything. But it says, deciding on your goal clears the fog immediately and allows you to focus and channel your energy and your abilities. So when you really know where you want to go, it just focuses your energy and how much you can get accomplished. It's almost like if you take and put your hand out in the sun, how long does it take you to get burned? You might have to sit there for hours for it to get burned. Take the magnifying glass and focus that light, and it won't be long before you're moving your hand, you see? So that's what goals do. They take all this energy that's all out there and going in 1,000 different directions and begin to focus it laser in one direction. And that's why when you have goals and you have a plan to accomplish them, you accomplish things far faster than you even believe it, okay? And so some of the tools that we have in the environment we have, and this is why we talk about giving voice. And giving voice is very important because what it allows Pastor Dan to do is check your fruits. Allow us to check the fruit. Because when you call up and you're serving somebody, you want to let them talk. Don't always talk and tell them this, tell them that. Sometimes I'm asking questions. Hey, how's it going? What's some challenges in your life? And you got to listen to what people are saying, and then you can help make some corrections. Because a lot of times, you know, Daraka and I, we talk all the time, and one of the things that he had with his budget, we had to sit down. Months and months and months, we talked about budget. But see, when he was ready to move, because he was with corrections, and he had to live in New York. He was living in New Jersey at the time, and he had to live in New York. So he had to figure out how to get here and get an apartment, get set up. And he had like almost a year. And by the time we sat down, I think it was like a month and a half away. And then when we sat down, that Friday, he had to have everything in. He was doing it. And he was ready to make some real challenging decisions based on the fact that the options, see, and this is what I learned, procrastination is a robber and a thief. It limits your options. See, the longer you wait, the more you limit your opportunity to react and respond to a situation. But when you have that future-mindedness, you can think far in advance and begin to prepare today, make better decisions in what you do today because you're looking at the future. And the further out in the future you look, the better decisions you make in the today, all right? So anyway, the moral of that story was we got it done. And he had to do some rushing around, but it's like how much pressure and how much worry and how much stuff would have saved you. And I'm not saying he wasn't looking around, but it was like when the deadline was looming, the motivation was there and he got it done. See, with goals, it gives you that same type of motivation at the very beginning to look at what you need to do. And what's funny is when you start taking that step, all of a sudden all these resources become available to you. One of the things that I always tell my kids, and they probably get sick of hearing it, is I talk about being focused and attention. But I said, let's say that you were coming to church today and I said, I'm going to give you $100 for every red car you saw. Now you're here. How many red cars did you see? How many red cars could you honestly say you saw? Probably none. But if I had told you before you left the house, for every red car, I'm going to give you $100. You probably see red cars all over the place. And see, that's what your goals do for you. When you focus on your goals, the things that are just going right by you, resources that are right under your nose, all of a sudden, because it becomes important, your mind, and I won't get into too much, I'm kind of like Lewis. You have something at the base of your spine. This is a sidebar, so if you're not inclined to like the technical stuff, this is where you can go to sleep. So you have something at the back of your head called a reticular activator. And basically what the reticular activator does is it allows your thoughts to pass from, you know, that short term down into that long-term memory, but it only is triggered by those things that are emotional or important to you or an emergency or a threat to you. That's why someone gave the example that a mother, if you live by a train track, you know, a train goes by, after a while you don't even, it's not important, so you don't even hear the train. It'll be 2 o'clock in the morning, the train goes by, you don't even hear it. But little baby, 6 rooms down, go, mother's up, and she's running down the room. That's small noise, but because it's important to her, she's going to focus on that. And that's how you tell your brain what's important when you focus on goals. So all of a sudden, whereas it wasn't important before, then all of a sudden you hear people talking about it. All of a sudden you're reading articles, you look at something on TV, and all of a sudden all these ways to accomplish your goals start to manifest themselves. So that's what happens when you write it down. Now, one of the things that goals are so powerful, right? And we're talking all these things about goal, and this is great. So the question you have to ask naturally, well, goals are so important, why don't people write them down? Why don't people set goals, right? And I got a couple of reasons why, and this is just my reasons, is that they don't realize the importance of goals. See, when you grow up in a house, and again, this is what we talk about the environment, a house where nobody has goals, you don't even know that goals are important. You don't even know goals exist, right? And it says that Yeah, or I have a question right here. How many people do you know that have clear, time-bound goals with a plan to achieve them? Oh, yeah, you know a few. And I'm not about to change yourself. But how many people do you have? Maybe a handful that you can count? It's very rare that we're in an environment where people set goals, where people know the importance of goals. And this is, again, what we pass on. We become a product of our environment. And that's why here, we're always challenging. We're always talking about the balance scale. We're always talking about setting goals. And as you're serving your people, you should be holding them accountable. And I can't make my folks set goals, but I'm always asking about them. I'm always making it the forefront of their minds. And then one day, when it becomes important enough, you'll set a goal. But you want to at least know that they exist. And the other one is they don't know how to set goals in the first place. Some people know about goals, but they just don't know how to set goals. And what's so funny is some people actually think they have goals, but they really don't have goals. They have wishes. They have dreams. Like if you hear somebody say something like, well, what do you want? I want to be happy. I want to make a lot of money. I want to have a nice family life. What is that? But see, one of the things about a goal is, and you know what a goal is because it's clear. Very specific, right? It's written, it's time bound, and you can measure it. If you can't, like, I want a lot of money. Okay, how do you measure that? And by when? But when you start making it time bound, very specific, so even if you spoke to a little child, they'll know whether you covered you accomplished your goal or not. That's when you're setting goals that are important and measurable, and you can get there. And the nice part about it, even if you're behind, and the goal is just, okay, by this date, that's just an estimate, right? So if you find out new things, just reset your goals. Because the next thing, the reason why people don't set goals, because of fear of failure. See, you set a goal, you don't make it, oh, I failed. and then all of a sudden you stop setting goals, and what people start doing is they unconsciously start really working on, instead of setting goals to accomplish something, they're setting goals to avoid pain. So they're setting goals very low, goals that they know are attainable. Then you begin living far below what your true potential is. And I think that's really what Yahweh's all about, stirring up the gift and telling us that you're more than a conqueror. You could do all things through Yeshua. The greater one is in you, and all these things are to get us to really believe that we could do more than we're actually doing. It reminds me in Lion King, if everybody saw that, Simba, you are more than what you've become. Well, why? Because he ran away. And he was running in fear and living in fear. So what he did is brought himself down to the place of Pumbaa and Timon, where he's eating snails and whatever and bugs and living Hakuna Matata, not a worry. And that's kind of the land we try to go to. We don't want to set goals. We don't want to challenge ourselves because we're afraid to get hurt. We're afraid that people are going to criticize us because we didn't accomplish our goal. So we're preferred to do nothing than to actually strive to accomplish something. And the last thing, you said that if you're going to set your sights, set it for the moon, because even if you miss the moon, you'll land among the stars. So you don't want to set your goals so low, because guess what? If you set your goals low, most likely you're going to accomplish it. And that means you're going to be living below what Yahweh has for you, okay? And that's also why we have, again, the tools. And this is just why, when you look at, and what I'm trying to do, I guess, in this whole goal setting process, is to see how important and how these tools really work in when you meditate on them. Because to really start looking at these fear of failure and setting goals, well, we have the 12 simple thoughts. And a couple that I pulled out that would address this is there are no second-class citizens. So you don't put other people down, but you don't put yourself down as well. The other thing we talk about is that you got to forgive, and forgive often. And that includes yourself. You got to forgive yourself, because I know I beat myself up about things that I've done in the past, but what I'm doing now is looking at where I'm at. I'm not there anymore, and I've grown, and I've changed. And one of the things that Einstein says, you can't solve a problem at the level level of thinking that created it. Sometimes you just got to educate yourself and bring yourself up. We make mistakes because we just don't know. But you don't have to stay there. You can get the answers, and that's what goals help you do. And the other one is make your supply fully available. And he has a now. And see, we can't just hold back. Just because things don't go the way we want, and we might get into one ministry, and all of a sudden, and don't get offended. And Pastor Dan did a real good thing about offense. He said offense is where now let me make sure I get it. You could be hurt and something happens, But when you're offended, then it makes it very hard for the person to come back. That's where you put up walls. That's where you get angry. That's where you cut people off. But when you're hurt, it's just, yes, I'm hurt about what happened, but you still have the door open for a person to come back. But when you're in this situation, you don't want to be easily offended, because you don't want to begin building walls up that cut you off from resources. Also, we win, let's play. So if things don't work out, well, this is not the end of the game. This is, yeah, maybe I had one setback, but this is not the end of the game, because I win. And when you have that in mind, then you push through all the challenges and that come your way. And one person I know always used to say that a setback is just a setup for a comeback. So when you think about that, it's never over until you quit. And then we're all called to do great things, but we just can't do it alone. And then in Him, we have everything that we need. So when you have that mindset, these are the things that kind of inoculate you from that fear, worry, fear of failure, because you're focusing on this. Remember what we said at the very beginning, you become what you think about most of the time, and your world is reflecting back to you what you're thinking about on the inside. So anyway, something to think about. And then the other one is fear of rejection. Because we set goals and we think that others are going to ridicule us or they're going to criticize us, we don't do anything. Well, I'll tell you one thing is, when you set a goal and you're around those type of people, just don't say anything. Just don't keep it to yourself and just accomplish the goal. And they're going to say, how the heck did you do that? And then you let them know, because I set goals. So sometimes it's good. Matter of fact, the Lord told me that one time, you need to learn the language of silence. Sometimes you just need to learn to be quiet. So and then the other one, and then I'm going to probably open it up for some comments, and then we'll get back to some of my thoughts. But here it just talks about clarity and why clarity is so important, and this is easy to understand. Now I'm going to give you just a quick analogy here, saying, suppose that you arrive on the outskirts of a large city, and you've been told to drive to a particular location in that city. And here's the catch, that there are no road signs and you don't have a map. You only have a general description about the location you're going to go to. And here's a question. How long do you think it would take you to find that without road maps and road signs? And that's how we live our life. We have no road maps, we have no signs, we're wandering around and we're trying to find a location. We're trying to find this place, more money, happy family, but we have no plans, we have no goals, we have nothing specific to guide us or tell us where we go. And this brings me back to, if you saw Alice in Wonderland, and she gets to the fork in the road and she looks at the Cheshire Cat and says, which direction should I take? And he says, well, it depends. Where do you want to go? And she said, it doesn't make a difference. He says, well, it doesn't make a difference which road you take. See, if you don't know where you want to go, it doesn't make a difference. You're going to end up someplace, but it's probably not going to be where you want to go. But see, if you tell me where you want to go, then I could be very definitive in which direction you should be going in. And that's when you don't have goals. You're just drifting along and floating along and just letting life pass you by and wondering why things don't change. And you go home and watch TV and just say, hey, my life really is terrible. Well, because you probably have no goals, right? And then it says, this is how people live life. So it said that. And then it said, things don't just get better by themselves. Goals allow you to control the change in your life. Goals allow you to instill meaning and purpose into everything that you do. So you just don't feel like you're just drifting along and things are happening. All right, so now what I'm going to do is, before I move on, I do have a couple people here. And what I want to do is just kind of open it up for some given voice. But I'll give you a couple things that you might want to think about. And here's some, I guess, starter questions, and you might want to address that. One question is, I talked about it before, lessons learned, changes made. What are some of the lessons you learned during 2017, and maybe some corrections and changes that you want to make going into 2018? And you could say, and you can kind of apply to, what have you learned by using the My Deeper Life tools and principles that have shown you some ways to improve going into 2018? Or another thing is, what tools are you going to work on incorporating in 2018? Because I know we have our favorite ones, but this one gentleman said, this Albert Schweitzer, I think it was, he says, when all you have is a hammer, your whole world looks like a nail. So when all you have is one tool, that's all you go to, then that's it. But sometimes you want to get more tools for the job, all right? So you might want to expand the toolbox. And what are some of the 2017 goals that you accomplished this year and feel really good about? And the last one is, if you could share, what are some of the things that you would like to get done in 2018? What areas would you like to grow in? So I saw Kim put her hand up, so we're going to ask her to come up and just share a little bit here. So let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. That was really good. That was some really good stuff that you had brought up, Larry, because one of the things that you had brought up when you gave that example of the car going so slow, because you're, it made me think of Barney Rubble. I know, I just have to say this one because I thought Barney was so funny, but this one time when they were taking Bam Bam to the hospital when they first got him, Betty kept saying, "Slow down, Barney, slow down." And then a turtle was walking past them. And Barney said, "If I go any slower, we're going backwards. And so I don't want to go backwards because I'm so slow, and then I got to start over from the beginning," and everything was something. So I thought that was really good. But the reason why I know a few people that set goals is because I interview people. And so a lot of them are like students or something like that. And so really a lot of them got me in the habit of putting more things on my calendar and everything. Because after you're speaking to people over and over, they're saying, "Oh yeah, I'm very organized," and they're talking about their organization skills. It's like, you know what, let me start picking up from these people that I'm speaking to so that I could be more organized also. But one of the things that I know I have been sharing with people is I speak to a lot of people and they have all these wonderful ideals and they never write it down. And so I said, you have to write it down, because if you see it on paper, it will make you move. And if you need someone to help you, they have something to look at so that they'll be willing to move. And then some of them are even, they know the scriptures, like write the vision down and they will run with it and everything. But one of the things that I had looked back at my goals and everything for 2017, and I realized that some of the certifications that I wanted to do, I haven't been working on it. And then I had the opportunity with the QuickBooks certification. It was kind of like the Rocka. It was like the last minute. They have this week that they're going to do certification. And then when I got there, they were also doing the exam. So I did get a chance to accomplish that. But for the other one, I will be going into 2018 to get the other certification, because for this one, it's a lot of learning for me also. And so, but it's good. So at least I could see what did I accomplish and where am I going from this point. So I know that's definitely one of my goals for 2018. And then the tool that I will probably work on more is the fruit of the spirit, because I don't do that, because I could explain that exercise to everybody, but but it's like I'm not really focusing on something each week. And I think I need to, especially after I got through ministering Wednesday and I had mentioned that. And it's like, Kim, that's a lesson for you too. That's a tool that Yahweh really gave you, and it's a simple tool that we put in the tool book that we could really use so that it's easy to get along with people and have the best customer service so you could build clients, to have the best attitude so you could bring people into the kingdom and everything. And so even for everything that we do, because Yahweh give us desires and everything, but it still should somehow connect to kingdom building. So I just wanted to share that. Yeah.
Sorry. Hello, everybody. Yeah, thank you for that, Larry. That touched on so many areas that applied to me. It was like amazing, you know. I think I'm going to touch on like my goals for 2018, because 2017 was a really amazing year. There was a lot of good things. There's a lot of, not challenging things as well. So, but I think some of the main things that I needed to accomplish in 2017, Yahweh just really came through amazingly for me, and I praise Yahweh for that. So you guys know about my job situation from going into 2017. My job was going to be closing down, and Yahweh just delivered me into such a amazingly better situation, and it was, praise Yahweh for that. I won't go all into that right now. And so now going into 2018, I keep seeing, the thing I really, really want to work on is spiritually and personally, especially like Kim said, developing in the fruit of the Spirit, because a lot of what she said on Wednesday was very, very touching my spirit a lot too. So I was like, I really, really need to work on this, because especially when I was coming out of my situation with my last job, I had a tremendous amount of challenges too with coworkers and stuff like that. And I think I handled it okay, but there was still some things in my spirit that I was like, maybe I could have handled it better. And I had one of my prayers when I was preparing to leave that job was to, like, Yahweh, help me to do this right, especially from the people that gave me some challenges. Because, there was a group of men that were just really out there. I don't know what their issue was, but, praise Yahweh, it stretches me. It stretched me. And I praise Yahweh for it now. Not so much when I was going through it. I was like, it was really hard. But now I think how Yahweh's working in my life, he's allowing me to run into these challenging people so he can stretch me, because it's only going to make me better for the kingdom. So now I really, really want to focus on that going into 2018. Because, the job situation straight, financially straight, just something that I need to focus on. Getting more, diving more into the spiritual and the personal part. So that's what I'm gonna be setting goals for 2018, and really, really applying these principles, because I've seen them work. I just really, really see them work. They haven't stopped ceasing to work. When I was going through the challenges at my job, as I was walking into the place and knowing that, those challenging people were right behind the door, I would just be saying, I get to work here. I get to work here. And it just helped me through, something just as simple as doing that. And I win. And I'm not a second-class citizen, because that was one of the major attacks that, people were trying to make me feel like a second-class citizen. So it was, and knowing that I wasn't, just helped me so much and to get through all of that. So I know they work, so I know that I can overcome the spiritual and the personal part of it as well. So that's what I'm going to be really, really working on. Praise Yahweh for the help. Any help and any ministering, Brother Larry and Sister Kim can give. Hallelujah. I'll be taking notes and praying about it and everything. So, hallelujah. That's what I have.
Hello, everybody. Oh, okay. That was a good class. I like it. It's like you process the food for me. It makes it easier to chew. All the tools and everything. It's easy to swallow now. So, I'm going to start on the correction first. What correction I received this year from Yahweh through many people. On the job, I have that problem. I had, because it got corrected. When I'm busy, if I have a lot to do, I don't ask for help. That's what they complained. They said, Marie, you don't ask for help. I said, but don't you see I need help? Don't you know what assignment that I have? you had that patient the other day. You should know. They said, no, Marie, you need to ask. So Thursday, I was working at a heavy assignment up to here, and it was very light just because I asked for help. The little thing. Could you get me an IV pump, please? Could you draw the labs for me over here? But it makes my life simpler. And I had a lot of work to do that day. But at the end of the day, the best part of it, I wasn't mentally stressed. Because when I kind of like embrace to do everything by myself, what happened? I get so stressed here. Because I have to do this, I have to do that. But then when I ask people to do this little thing for me, and they do it. And I thought they wouldn't do it. Man, I shouldn't think bad about people. I thought they would not help me. I asked all of them. I have a saying, the young girl, the cute, they were kind of, I'm like, okay, she's not going to do it. But I said, I was so like drowning with work. I said, let me ask her. So I said, can you help me? She said, of course. I said, oh God, it's a blessing. And then I turned around and asked somebody else, of course, it's a blessing. So I value teamwork. And I don't take it personal when they say, I can help you, Mary. I'm really tied up. And I could go to the next one, and I feel better that way because it's less stress, mentally and physically, to accomplish everything by yourself. It just works on your mind when you say, I got to accomplish it, I got to do it. But when people help you, you just release that stress, and work it's a little easier. You get tired, but it's not mentally exhausting. So that's one correction. And I received that teamwork business, and it works. It feels good, though. I'm less tired. The second one correction was, the other day, Evelyn and I, we're going to go to Haiti to some crusade. Anyway, she's the one organizing the travel, the trip. For some reason, things fell apart, and I didn't know I had to come up with all that money. She told me, oh, like I think last week, maybe this is how much it's going to be. I said, no, you don't play with me now. You should have told me, and I would have organized myself. And I was panicking. And she said, 2 days later, she said, you panic too much. I said, well, what are you saying? I'm panicking too much. It's money I don't have, and you didn't tell me. I was worrying about that. And she goes, you know what? You need to put some joy in your life. Didn't Yahweh come through for you many times? You think it's not going to come through for you? It's like, I was like, okay, you got faith, but I don't like that attitude that I don't know ahead of time. It's 2 weeks before I have to come up with the money that you tell me. I'm a crazy freak, organized. You got to tell me 6 months ahead. But then I learned that lesson. She said, you need to put some joy in your life. She's just like, it's like she's talking to Joe. I'm like, oh no, I get the Joe kind of like attitude. So that was a good correction, and I'm like, okay, I got to work on on the fruit of the spirit, that joy business. Don't let any kind of news making me panic, like it's not going to come through. And I was surprised because when I got my paycheck this week, I said, oh God, I could pay it. I didn't think about that paycheck. I forgot I haven't gotten paid. That's so much panic cloud my world. So I'm okay. I received that correction. It's a good one. I thank Yahweh for it. And the positive thing that I got today, they're all positive. But the main thing that I got today that I never thought of, setting goals. I know about setting goals. I heard about it. The time frame when you set your goals, that means a lot. And even if you don't get to accomplish it by the time you set, you could always come back. Setback is set up for a comeback. So I learned that, and it's very good. So I'm going to set up about paying my debts now. It sounds better. It sounds more doable. And I learned, I got a lot. Like I said, you process the tool. I can swallow it now. Thank you, family. Thank you.
You see, even though we got a small group, we got a lively group here. So I love it. So what I'm going to do is this, and I just have a few more things that I'll go ahead and throw out, and then if nobody has anything else to say, we'll wrap it up. But just to kind of summarize, here are some things that you could do to get your goal process jump started. First, you start with an image that you have inborn. You have all the inborn ability and talent to achieve any goal. that you could ever set for yourself, what do you really want to do, have, or be? And this is just getting back to that question, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? So just take yourself out in the future. And I heard one guy say it really well. He said, something, well, I don't believe that because I'll be lying. We'll just say, no, you're not lying. You're just telling yourself the truth in advance. That's it. You're just telling yourself the truth. So don't get into, well, this is not true and I don't have this. No, tell yourself the truth in advance and see yourself far out. You got to take the limitations off. And then look at your personal life. And this is now, we're going to get into a little bit about the next step to preparing for goal setting, which is taking responsibility and not being a victim. It says, look at your personal life and work, and then try to identify how your thinking has created your world. See, when you see stuff around you, say, how did it get here? How did I think this one up? Because see, like I told you, a lot of times our thinking is very, very subconscious. We don't think about it. We just go through the motions, but we're putting things into play. So if you're looking in your life, and then the other things, some things you've done that are good, that you don't acknowledge and give yourself the credit. And this gets back to the Bible, which they said, remember when they went across over the Red Sea, what's the first thing that Yahweh said? Take some stones, build it up, and build an altar. So when your kids walk by and ask you, what is that? You get to rehearse how Yahweh's delivered you. And this is the same thing in our lives. We have to write our goals down. And Marie, right on point, she said that Yahweh, what's the first thing that Evelyn said? Well, hasn't he come through before? Well, because we're not thinking about it, we will forget all the stuff that he's done, and we're focused on the situation versus approaching it as, hey, he's delivered me. What did David say? Hey, from the bear, from the lion, he did this, he did that, and I'm taking your head off. So that's the mindset that you want. So anyway, look at your personal life and see how your thinking has created your life. And then determine the price that you have to pay to achieve those goals, and then get busy paying that price. And I think that that's the one where we really get stuck. We don't want to pay the price. And sometimes the price is being disciplined. Sometimes the price is not having fun in this way, going out with the gang, but sitting down and disciplining yourself to do what you need to do. So you got to discipline yourself to pay the price. Okay, so the next step, which before you get to goal settings, you just really want to get rid of some negative emotions and you want to take responsibility. It says if I don't change, then nothing's going to change. And that's a whole thing of insanity. Keep doing things the same way and expect different results. If you're getting something that you don't want, something's got to change. And I'll tell you a story which is not really that funny, but I like it, so I'm going to tell it to you. There was a guy who he was a construction worker. He came to work, and then it was lunchtime, and all the guys are sitting around. They're getting ready to eat lunch. He opens up his lunchbox. Bologna sandwiches. I hate bologna sandwiches. And he was complaining about bologna sandwiches. So this went on Monday. It went on Tuesday. Wednesday, they went to the foreman and said, look, you got to tell Larry to stop complaining about bologna sandwiches because he's just making lunch so unbearable. So you got to talk to him. So the foreman goes and talks to Larry and says, look, the guys are saying you're really making lunch uncomfortable, and they really want you to calm down. So if you don't like bologna sandwiches, tell your wife, just stop making your bologna sandwiches. He said, my wife, I make my own lunch. So sometimes we make our own lunch and we complain about it. So this is taking responsibility for your actions and what you do. If you create something, stop complaining about it, right? It says growth and maturity is not grow and mature. And what I say, maturity does not come with age, it comes with the acceptance of responsibility. See, you can have a young child who takes responsibility and you'll say, wow, he's really mature. And then you can have somebody 40 years old complaining and taking no responsibility. Look at that little immature guy. So growing up isn't about age, it's about accepting responsibility. And the more responsibility you accept and you're not a victim, actually you feel better about yourself. There's a principle called locus of control, which, in psychology they talk about it, and it says to the degree you feel in control from the inside out, you feel better about yourself. But when you feel like a victim and everything's happening, you have no control, you don't feel very good. So when you start maturing and taking responsibility for your life, you start feeling better about your life because you're not waiting for people to come along and make it better. And then negative emotions, I talked about before, hold you down and stifles your creativity. So when you're really upset, you're mad, it's hard to think. And again, with my other passage says that your world is colored by the condition of your heart. See, when you're very envious, you see everybody through envious eyes. When you're mad, you see everybody through mad eyes. When you're jealous, you see everybody through jealousy. And you know something? What you look for, you actually find. There were people who actually accusing their spouse or their significant other of always cheating. Now all of a sudden they lose a relationship, and that's the very thing they were afraid of losing. So you got to be very careful when you get these negative emotions, because it skews your whole world. Right? And you can start seeing where negative emotions, which is the primary one, anger, starts poking his head up, because here's what you start hearing: justification. Right? And the reason why you justify is really just to say it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be angry. And you justify why your actions, though they're not good, you justify why it's okay to be upset. The other thing is rationalization. And rationalization is a way to explain away or excuse your behavior, even if it's not right. So when you see people who are angry or upset, what's the first thing they start doing? They start telling you why they're upset and what this person did, and they rationalize it. And see, the other thing about rationalization and justification, it needs something to be upset at. So you're usually mad about someone or some situation, which allows you to justify and rationalize. Another negative emotion is being overly concerned with what people think about you. And some people live their life that way, where I can't do this because they're going to think this, or what about that, what about that? And it's funny, I love my brother, but he always used to, my mother used to talk to him, and he always talks about they this, they that. It's like, she said, who is they? You know, you're so concerned about these people, you don't even know, oh, they're going to think this, and they're going to think that. Who is they? And why are you so concerned with they? But you really have to not be overly concerned about what people think. And the funny part about that is you might make this person happy, but you're going to make that person upset. So someone's always going to be upset. So you might as well kind of get to yourself and say, I'm going to do what I think is right. And then also you blame other people for your problems. So these are all things that fuel negative emotions, which stifles your creativity and kind of impedes your ability to accomplish goals. So you really want to get rid of these negative emotions. Well, here's what you say. You say, I am responsible, because it's really hard to be upset when you say I am responsible. I am responsible. I'm here where I am today because I'm responsible. Like you lose your job. Well, you could go ahead and complain about it's unfair, it's this, it's that, it's a job, it's a boss, it's that. And you can think of all these things, but you stay angry. But are you looking for a job? No. You're just complaining and you're upset. But when you say, you know something, I got laid off, this is what it's going to be. Okay, they have their business reasons. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and find another job. You find another job. But see how that stifles you and keeps you from pursuing what you want because you're too busy complaining. And the other part about it, people will turn the other way. I mean, have you ever a person always complaining and here they come and you're like, oh boy, I hope they didn't see me. And you want, because you just don't want to be around people who are going to just dump on you. So you don't want to be in that position. And here's something Eleanor Roosevelt said: no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So people can't make you feel bad. They can't make you less than you are unless you give them that control over your life. And that's why, and I believe, yeah, you were saying it, Cerise says there is no second-class citizen. See, when you started out, they were able to make you feel inferior. They were able to feel you less than. But when you started changing your thinking because of these principles, all of a sudden you say, hey, there is no second-class citizen. And then it started changing the way you think, and now you can go in it and not let people affect you. And that's where we want to get to. And then we talked about clarity, you know, and again, you want to clarify your values. And I won't go into all of them, but we know we have the deeper life principles. We heard I get to, you know, you look at things like you went into a job. Hey, I get to, I'm working. You're not focused on, oh, this is bad. You're focused on, hey, some people don't have a job. I get to. Around the church, I get to serve. I get to do this. So when you have that attitude, it's I get to. And Pastor Dan even explains it in the book, is when you're tall, don't be surprised if people ask you to get stuff on the top shelf. It's like, well, because you're tall, you know. And if you're strong for guys and you're around the house, yeah, your wife might ask you, could you lift this up? You can't get upset. Why? Because you're strong. So don't be upset with the gifts you're given. Just say, I get to, and have that right frame of mind. How can I serve you? Take your mind off yourself and look at serving other people, and then somebody's going to come along and they're going to serve you. So what you want to do is you really want to clarify your values, like the 12 simple thoughts to fruit of the Spirit, because what begins to happen, what's very interesting, is I talked about where when you set goals that are inconsistent with your values, you feel bad about yourself, because even though you're accomplishing your goal, this is not who you are. So this is where we start with the kingdom calling and the spiritual life, and we get in line with Yahweh through one of the tools, reading and rhythm. So now we're all hearing the same thing, speaking the same language, and we're lining ourselves up, like Pastor Dan said, even with our conferences, we line them up with Yahweh's calendar. We want to be on his agenda. We want to be in line. He even talked about praise and worship. That aligns you with the word that's going to come forth. So everything that we do in this environment is lining ourselves up to be prepared for Yahweh to work in our life. And same thing, they talk about in goal setting that you got to clarify your values, because what you want to do is once you clarify your value, you begin organizing your life to be consistent with your values, and then this becomes who you are, not what you do. It's not like, okay, I do the fruit of the Spirit. No, the fruit of the Spirit is a part of me and the way I think. 12 simple thoughts. It was started out probably walking in, there's no second class citizen, and you keep on saying, then at one time you walk in, you're not even thinking about it, but nobody can put you down, because that's who you are. I'm not a second class citizen, and I'm not going to allow anybody to put me there, because I know the greater one resides in me. But these are the things that Pastor Dan said, you got to train to these. So we talked about having a clear vision, writing it down, taking our values. So a clear vision is where we want to go, and then we clarify our values, and then we now say, okay, we're prepared to set some goals. But the last thing I'll just talk about here about the inside of you, there was something that this gentleman was talking about values, and he talked about like 5 concentric circles. So he talked about personality, but it was like, here's how things work on the inside. It starts with your values, and then it says that positive values begin to influence what you believe. So if you believe that you're more than a conqueror, your values are, Yahweh says I'm more than a conqueror, you begin to believe it, just like there is no second-class citizen. That's a value that you say I'm going to live by, and you kept on walking into the job until you believed I'm not a second-class citizen. And so your beliefs begin to influence your expectations. So if you believe something, then you expect it. One of the things we talk about here is, I don't get sick. The Yahweh said, okay, my son died on the cross, so by his stripes you're healed. So that's a value, that's a principle, that's something that you believe in. Then you start saying it, you believe, I don't get sick. I don't get sick. And I tell people, you got to do it with a sniffly nose. You can't wait until you have cancer to say, oh, I don't get sick. I don't get sick. So you practice this, and all of a sudden, your belief starts influence your expectation. I expect not to be sick. As a matter of fact, I was talking at work, they were talking about flu shots, right? And they were going around, and all the flu shot is injecting you with the virus a little bit so you could build up antibody. And they would say, well, you need this because there's a new strain of this and that. And I said, how about I don't get sick? and I refused to take the shot, but I'm like, hey, I just don't get sick. If I thought I got sick, maybe I would get a shot, but I don't get sick. And in 11 years of being at Delta, I think 3 times I called out because a sickness was attacking me. And actually, one of the times I went into work and they told me to go home. For 11 years, I just don't take off because I'm sick. And then Pastor Dan talks about, he comes up here and ministers anyway, because if he gives up because he's sick, guess what? He's going to be sick all the time, so the enemy can keep him off the pulpit. So again, your expectations start being influenced, and then all of a sudden your attitude is influenced by that, because hey, I'm happy, I don't get sick, I'm in great health, my attitude is good about my health. And someone said that your attitude determines your approach, and your approach determines your success or failure. Why? Because your attitudes, begin to the last part, influence your actions. And see, the actions you put out determines what you're getting back. So one of the things this gentleman saying is that you actually, it's more about what's going on inside you than it is what's going on around you. And that's why it's so important with these tools and everything. And this is what Pastor Dan is trying to get into us. It's about taking these things and internalizing them, so when you walk through life, that you have these tools, you have these mindset, that things just don't hold you back. You're not becoming your own worst enemy. So I thought that was really good. So once you organize that, your values, then you're beginning to influence how your world begins to develop. And let me see, I need to clarify my values and align. Okay, these are some things I said to myself personally, but one of the things that he did say, which I thought was really good, and I'll kind of wrap up with this, is that attention is the key to life. Wherever your attention goes, that's where you go as well. So you really want to pay attention to the things that we talked about. We want to pay attention to the tool book. And then the law of education says that you can only teach the degree that you know, which is so why you really want to be serving somebody, because you could be reading all this stuff and you can be in agreement with it and hey, it's all great, but it's not until you actually begin to put it out you start seeing what you really believe and then what you really understand. I remember one class I went to, somebody was saying, and I'll kind of put it in my words, is let's say that Kim and I, she's never been in New York before, she's a friend of mine, and then Teresa's going to be coming in on a later flight, and then let's say Marie. So I pick her up, and I drive her from Kennedy Airport to my house. And then we get to the house, and I say, oh, by the way, you're going to go back and pick up Teresa. I'm going to go, and I'm going to get Marie at LaGuardia. First thing you ask, okay, how do I get back? What roads do I take? But if I had told you at the very beginning that's what was going to happen, you're like, okay, what road is this? What turn we're going to take? How do I get here? And you're very attentive because you really think that you're going to use it. My point being is if you take this and then you say, okay, I have to now teach it, then all of a sudden you pay more attention. And then when you start explaining stuff, guess what? You start finding out what you really don't know. Things that you really have to go back and you really, oh, I thought I knew that. How many times you've been in class and something's been explained to you and then you get home, you're like, wait 1 second, I don't really think I understood that. But when you really pay attention, knowing that you have to bring it back to pay it forward, then you really start paying attention to it. So that's why you want to get fully engaged. And then once all that's set up, you got a clear vision, right? You get rid of the negative attitudes. You take responsibility for your life. You look at your values and how you want to live your life. Now you're on the launching pad. Now you're ready to start setting your goals that are going to be really personal, that are going to be motivating, and that are going to get you where you want to go. And that's all I have. So I hope you all got something out of that. And we're going to go ahead. It looks like anybody, before I do that, anybody else have anything they would like to say? Okay. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close it, and we can go ahead and take up an offering. And if you're online, you can go ahead, you can go to faithexchange.org, click on the donate button, and you can go ahead and donate that. So I hope it all helped you. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.